The mysterious signal. The U.S. horizon cut through the depths of space, its engines humming quietly as it traveled along its usual patrol route. Captain Tessa Clark stood at the command center, staring at the blinking lights on the console before her. The stars outside the viewport stretched into infinity, a canvas of shimmering dots against the dark void. But something was different today. A signal, faint at first, had begun pulsing in the depths of space, a signal that didn't match anything in the Federation's known database. "Captain," Lieutenant Riker called out from his station, his voice filled with curiosity. "We're picking up something strange. It's a distress call. But it doesn't match any known frequencies. It's weak, but there's a pattern to it." Tessa raised an eyebrow. Her interest piqued. "Can you isolate it?" Riker quickly adjusted the controls, and the faint transmission became clearer. It was a series of broken phrases, interspersed with static. The words that broke through the noise were chilling. "Humans, we need help. They're coming." Tessa's heart raced. The word humans didn't just appear in distress calls from alien civilizations. She had heard rumors of human-like beings in the far reaches of the galaxy, but none that were actually part of any known interstellar diplomacy. "Where is it coming from?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Coordinates locked," Riker replied. "It's coming from a region of space that's off our usual charts. Unexplored, Captain. No ships have ever ventured this deep." Tessa felt a twinge of uncertainty in her gut. This was no ordinary distress signal. It was a cry for help from someone, or something, that shouldn't have been there in the first place. But it was a call, and she wasn't one to turn her back on a call for help. "Set a course, Lieutenant. Full speed ahead," she commanded, determination in her voice. The crew of the U.S. Horizon moved swiftly as Tessa, standing at the front of the bridge, could feel the weight of the unknown pressing against her chest. A wave of uncertainty washed over her, but she quickly brushed it aside. She had faced dangerous situations before, but this one felt different. This one felt personal. As they approached the coordinates, Tessa's thoughts raced. Who would send out such a signal? And why was it marked with a human trace? The universe had never been kind to humanity, but their resilience had made them survive in the harshest conditions. Could this signal be a cry from other humans lost in space, or was it something more sinister? The crew remained silent, each person lost in their own thoughts, as the horizon drifted closer to the source of the signal. In the quiet of space, the only sound was the steady hum of the ship's systems. But deep down, everyone aboard felt it. The unmistakable feeling that something was waiting for them on the other side. The ship neared the coordinates, and the screen in front of Tessa flickered. A large shadow appeared, blocking out the stars behind it. The object in question wasn't just a ship, it was something much larger. A massive structure that looked as though it had been abandoned for eons, yet somehow still operational. Tessa's eyes widened in disbelief as she gazed upon the colossal vessel. It was an alien ship, larger than anything the Federation had ever encountered. Its surface was covered in strange, glowing symbols, and its design was completely foreign. But despite its eerie appearance, there was no mistaking it. The distress signal was coming from that very ship. "Prepare to board," Tessa ordered. "Get the team ready. I want full scans of the area. We're going in." The air on the bridge grew tense as the crew scrambled to follow orders. Tessa stood still, her eyes locked on the alien ship as the horizon drifted closer. She knew that what awaited them inside could change the course of human history, either a step forward into a new alliance or a terrifying revelation about the unknown dangers lurking in the galaxy. The time for questions was over. It was time to uncover the truth. As the horizon's airlocks aligned with the mysterious ship's docking bay, Tessa felt a strange chill run down her spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something far bigger than any of them could have imagined. "Captain," Riker's voice broke through her thoughts. "We're receiving another transmission. It's coming from inside the ship." Tessa nodded. "Put it on screen." The transmission flickered into view, and a voice, cracked and desperate, spoke through the static. Please, help us. We are the last of humanity. They're coming. They won't stop until... The message cut off abruptly. Tessa's heart skipped a beat. This was it. They had found them. Set course for the docking bay. Prepare the boarding team. We're going in. As the crew of the U.S. Horizon moved into action, Captain Clark couldn't help but wonder, what would they find inside this alien vessel? Would they discover other humans, lost and stranded, or was there something far darker waiting for them? One thing was certain. Humanity's resilience was about to be tested in ways they had never imagined. The silent hallways. The heavy thud of boots echoed through the metallic corridors of the alien vessel as Captain Tessa Clark and her crew stepped cautiously into the unknown. The air was thick with a strange, lingering scent, like metal and decay. The dim lighting flickered erratically, casting long shadows that danced eerily across the walls. Tessa's eyes scanned every corner, every surface, trying to make sense of the chaos before her. The team, clad in their Federation spacesuits, moved silently. The silence was unsettling, amplified by the weight of their unknown surroundings. The hum of the Horizon's engines had already faded into the distance, leaving only the creaks and groans of the alien ship to break the stillness. "Stay alert," Tessa whispered to her crew, her voice steady, but filled with unease. "This ship is ancient, and we don't know what we're walking into." Lieutenant Riker, the first to enter the corridor, crouched down and tapped his comm device. "There's no sign of life, no power fluctuations outside of the transmission we received. But this place, it's not entirely dead. The systems are on low power, like it's been dormant for a long time." The walls around them were covered in strange symbols, alien hieroglyphs, glowing faintly as if reacting to the presence of life forms. Tessa's hand hovered near the hilt of her plasma rifle, an instinctive reaction, but she felt a deep sense of awe too. This was a discovery unlike any before it. This ship wasn't just a relic. It was a gateway to something far greater. "Keep moving," she ordered, her voice breaking the tension. "Let's find the source of the transmission." As the crew advanced, the silence grew more oppressive. The ship's interior was a maze of narrow hallways and strange doorways, each one leading to what appeared to be abandoned rooms. There were no signs of aliens, no creatures lurking in the shadows, no crew to speak of, just the haunting echoes of a ship left to float alone in the depths of space, for who knew how long. "We should be getting closer," Riker said, glancing at the glowing map on his wrist console. "The signal's origin is only a few decks down." Suddenly, a soft sound broke through the quiet, the faintest of clicks. It was almost imperceptible, like the sound of metal shifting or a door closing in the distance. Tessa froze, signaling to her team to stop. Her instincts screamed that they weren't alone. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. The crew nodded. The noise had been faint, but they all recognized the unsettling feeling that accompanied it. Something was moving within the depths of the ship, and they weren't the only ones walking its halls. "Stay sharp," Tessa ordered. "We may not be as alone as we thought." As they moved deeper into the heart of the vessel, the layout grew increasingly bizarre. The walls curved at strange angles, almost organic in nature, as if the ship had been grown rather than built. The corridors expanded and contracted, twisting in ways that defied normal geometry. The further they went, the more it became clear that this wasn't just a ship. It was something more, something alive. Lieutenant Riker's voice came over the comms. "Captain, I found something. A room up ahead. It's different from the others. The air is thick with energy." Tessa gestured for the team to follow. As they approached the door, she felt a strange pressure in the air. It wasn't physical, but it tugged at her mind, making her feel as though something monumental was about to unfold. The room beyond the door hummed, a low vibration that resonated through their suits, as if calling them closer. When the door slid open with a quiet hiss, Tessa's heart skipped a beat. Inside, the room was illuminated by a soft, pulsing light, and in the center stood a strange alien console, It looked ancient, yet somehow maintained an air of functionality. The surface of the console shimmered with shifting symbols, symbols that reminded Tessa of the ones they had seen on the walls outside. But it was what lay beside the console that truly caught her attention. 6 human children, all roughly between the ages of 8 and 12, were sitting in a semicircle around the device. They were dressed in simple, yet recognizable, Federation Space Scout uniforms, their faces calm and focused. Their eyes, those wide, curious, and innocent eyes, were fixed on the console, seemingly entranced by the light. Tessa's breath caught in her throat. These were the children from the distress signal, the last remnants of humanity. "Are they okay?" Riker asked, stepping forward with caution. Tessa nodded slowly, but a knot formed in her stomach. The children appeared unharmed, but there was something unsettling about the way they were positioned. They were too still, their bodies perfectly aligned, as if they were waiting for something or someone. "Kids," Tessa called out, her voice soft but commanding. "Are you all right? Can you hear me?" For a moment, there was no response. The children remained motionless, their gazes still fixed on the alien console. Tessa's heart began to pound in her chest. She took a step forward, but before she could move any closer, the smallest of the children, a girl with bright red hair tied in 2 pigtails, turned her head slowly and smiled at her. "You're not supposed to be here," the girl said, her voice soft but laced with a strange wisdom. Tessa's heart skipped a beat. The words hit her like a punch, and a shiver ran down her spine. "What do you mean?" But before the girl could respond, a loud, mechanical sound echoed through the ship, followed by a deep rumble. The walls shook violently, and the ship seemed to lurch forward, as though waking from a long slumber. Tessa's comms crackled to life with a warning from Riker. "Captain, we've got movement. Something's coming. I don't know what it is, but it's big." The girl stood up abruptly, her eyes never leaving Tessa's. "They're coming," she said simply. "And when they do, it won't be just you they're after." Tessa's mind raced. Who, or what, was coming? And what did the children know that she didn't? The answers were just out of reach, and the deeper they ventured into the alien vessel, the more questions multiplied. It was clear that whatever was about to unfold would push humanity to its limits, forcing them to fight for survival in ways they never imagined. And Tessa had no idea if they would even make it out alive. The awakening. The rumble beneath their feet grew louder, shaking the very foundation of the alien ship. Tessa Clark's pulse quickened as the walls trembled, and the once muted hum of the vessel now vibrated with growing intensity. The children, still seated in their perfect semicircle around the alien console, remained eerily still, but their eyes were now wide open, reflecting something far deeper than mere curiosity. Tessa glanced at Riker, who stood near the entrance of the chamber, his face a mask of concern. "What's happening? What's causing this?" "I'm not sure, Captain," Riker replied, his voice tense. "The ship's systems are powering up, but there's no external source. It's like it's reacting to something, or someone." The pulsating lights in the room began to flicker, faster now, almost in sync with the pounding in Tessa's chest. The symbols on the console shifted again, glowing brighter with every beat. She had a sudden, overwhelming sense that the ship was alive, conscious, aware, and perhaps not entirely friendly. The little red-haired girl, still standing, looked up at Tessa. Her smile was gone now, replaced by an expression of quiet certainty. "It's awake," she said softly, "and it knows you're here." Tessa's breath caught in her throat. "What is awake? What do you mean?" The girl stepped toward the console and placed a hand on its surface. The moment she touched it, the entire room seemed to exhale. The glow of the symbols shifted, flowing like liquid light, swirling around the children's bodies. They remained as still as statues, their eyes locked onto the console as if they were communing with it. For a fleeting moment, Tessa's mind flashed with a terrifying thought. What if these children weren't just survivors? What if they were something more, something part of this ship, or worse, its purpose? "What is it?" Tessa repeated, trying to keep her voice steady. The girl's eyes, now glowing faintly, met Tessa's gaze. "The ship," she whispered. "It's not just a ship. It's a vessel for something much bigger, something ancient." Suddenly, the console emitted a sharp, resonant sound, a pulse that seemed to reverberate through the very air itself. The rumble in the ship grew deafening, and Tessa instinctively covered her ears. Then, just as quickly, the sound stopped. Silence fell once more, but it was no longer peaceful. The silence was thick, leaden with anticipation. Riker took a cautious step forward, his voice low but urgent. "Captain, I think we've triggered something. The ship is reactivating its systems. Something's coming. And it's not just us." Tessa's mind raced. "What do you mean, it's not just us?" Before Riker could answer, the floor beneath their feet shuddered violently, and the lights flickered again. A deep guttural growl resonated through the ship, echoing down the long, dark corridors beyond the chamber. The walls seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, as if the ship itself was alive and breathing. "Get back to the airlock," Tessa ordered, her voice sharp and commanding. "We need to leave now." But before anyone could move, the children suddenly stood in unison. Their movements were precise, mechanical, as if they had rehearsed it 1,000 times before. They began to chant, a low, rhythmic hum that matched the pulse of the ship's reawakening. The sound wasn't coming from their mouths, but from deep within their bodies, as though their very souls were resonating with the ship's heartbeat. Tessa's blood ran cold as she realized the terrifying truth. The children weren't just passengers. They were part of the ship, connected to it in a way she couldn't yet understand. Whatever ancient force lay dormant in the vessel had chosen them, and now it was awake, fully aware of their presence. "We can't leave," the little girl with red hair said softly, her voice far older than it should have been. "We're the key. You're part of the awakening." Tessa took a cautious step back, her mind racing. The implications of what the girl had just said were too much to comprehend. She couldn't leave. They couldn't leave. The ship was no longer just a relic. It was a force, and it was choosing them. A series of strange, alien voices echoed through the ship's halls, low and resonant, like the murmurs of a forgotten language. The children's chanting grew louder, and the symbols on the console began to twist and contort, forming shapes Tessa couldn't understand. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp around them. The girl's eyes locked onto Tessa once more, her expression serene yet filled with a quiet, unsettling power. "The ship has waited long enough," she said, her voice now harmonizing with the voices around them. "And now it will take what it is owed." Tessa's heart skipped a beat. Take what? But before she could ask another question, the entire room shifted. The walls began to retract, pulling back to reveal what lay beyond. The heart of the ship. It was a massive chamber, far larger than anything Tessa had imagined. In the center stood a colossal structure, pulsing with energy, an ancient alien artifact that seemed to merge seamlessly with the ship itself. The children, still locked in their trance, stepped toward it without hesitation. Tessa watched in disbelief as they approached the heart of the ship, their small figures dwarfed by the enormity of the alien device. It was clear now. The children weren't just survivors. They were the key to the ship's awakening. A voice, not human but deep and resonant, echoed in Tessa's mind. "You are here at the threshold, Captain Clark. But it is not your fate that will be decided today. It is theirs." Tessa's blood ran cold. The ship wasn't just a vessel, it was a judgment. And the children, somehow, were its judges. She had to make a choice, and quickly. "Retreat," she shouted to her crew, but her voice seemed to falter, swallowed by the overwhelming force that now filled the room. The lights flickered one final time, and in an instant, the children stopped chanting. Silence reigned. The ship, having awakened, now stood as an impenetrable force, its true purpose unfolding before them. But Tessa realized one undeniable truth. Their mission was no longer about rescue. It was about survival. The children had awakened something far beyond what they could ever have anticipated. And now, humanity's greatest test had only just begun. The final countdown. The silence that had descended upon the ship was suffocating. Captain Tessa Clark stood frozen, her eyes locked on the children who now stood in front of the pulsing alien artifact. The air around them seemed to crackle with an unnatural energy, as if the very fabric of the ship was alive, responding to the children's presence. Tessa's breath quickened as the realization hit her like a thunderclap. This was no ordinary mission. This wasn't about finding lost humans or rescuing survivors. This was about something far older, far more dangerous than anything she had ever encountered. The children were not just hostages. They were the keys to an ancient power that had been dormant for millennia. One of the children, a boy with dark hair and sharp, piercing eyes, turned slowly to face Tessa. His gaze was calm, but there was an unsettling awareness in his eyes that made Tessa feel like she was being weighed, measured by something far beyond her understanding. "You should leave," he said, his voice unusually deep for someone so young. "The ship has already chosen. You're too late to stop what's coming." Tessa felt a chill run down her spine as his words hit her. Too late. What did he mean? What was coming? The boy continued, his voice carrying a strange echo, as though it wasn't entirely his own. "The ship is not just a vessel. It is the harbinger of a reckoning, an awakening of something much greater than the stars themselves." Tessa's mind raced. She wanted to ask more questions, to understand what was happening, but something in the boy's words left her speechless. The ship, this vast and ancient vessel, had been waiting for these children, waiting for them to unlock something that should have stayed buried. "Captain," Riker's voice crackled over her comms. "We need to get out of here. The readings from the ship's core are off the charts. Whatever the children did, it's destabilizing the entire ship." Tessa's head snapped back toward the console. Riker was right. The once dormant systems of the ship were now fully active, and the energy readings were escalating rapidly. Something was wrong, and whatever it was building to a climax. The children, still standing in perfect formation around the artifact, didn't seem to notice the danger. They were locked in a trance-like state, their eyes glowing with an eerie light that reflected the pulsing energy around them. The very air around them seemed to hum with a power that Tessa could feel deep in her bones, a primal force that tugged at her instincts and made her skin crawl. Suddenly, the boy with dark eyes spoke again, his voice colder this time. "We are not just children. We are the chosen. The ship will not allow you to leave. We were born to this moment, to this awakening." Tessa's chest tightened. The words hit her like a slap in the face. The children weren't just passengers. They were central to the ship's purpose. They were the catalysts for something far more dangerous than any of them had anticipated. And they weren't about to let the crew leave. "We have to move," Tessa said, her voice steady despite the terror building inside her. "Now." But as she turned to lead her crew back to the exit, the walls of the chamber began to shift. The once still surface of the alien ship seemed to twist and warp, as if it were alive, responding to the children's presence. The entire room trembled, and the lights flickered again, casting everything in a strange, unsettling glow. Tessa's comms buzzed once more. "Captain," Riker said, his voice strained. "The ship's core is activating a countdown. We don't have much time. We need to get off this ship now." A low, ominous sound echoed through the chamber. A countdown. Slow at first, then building in speed. Each number felt like a hammer strike in Tessa's chest, resonating deep into her soul. 10, 9, 8. The voice of the ship boomed, an eerie mechanical voice that sent chills down her spine. 7, 6. Tessa's mind raced. What had they triggered? What had the children awakened? The ship was now in full control, and there was no way to stop it. Whatever this countdown led to, they were already caught in its path. "Captain," Riker's voice was almost frantic. "We can't outrun it. The ship's gravitational field is pulling us toward the core. We need to act now. The walls began to constrict, the space around them shrinking, as if the ship itself was closing in on them. The children stood motionless, their eyes locked on the artifact, completely oblivious to the chaos unfolding around them. Tessa's heart pounded in her chest as she looked at the crew, each of them wearing expressions of shock and determination. There was no more time for hesitation. They had to make a choice. "Move out," she shouted, her voice commanding as she turned to sprint toward the exit. But before they could take another step, the ship's core erupted with a blinding flash of light, and everything went still. The countdown had reached 0. A pulse of energy shot through the ship, flooding every room, every corridor with a blinding light. Tessa and her crew were thrown off their feet, tumbling through the air as the force of the explosion rocked the vessel. The walls seemed to crack, the ship groaning as though it was being torn apart from within. For a moment, everything went dark. And then the chaos stopped. When Tessa opened her eyes, she found herself in an entirely different place. The once imposing alien ship was gone, replaced by a vast, empty expanse. The children, the artifact, and the strange energy were all gone as well. They were no longer inside the ship. They were somewhere else, somewhere unknown. The stars above them were unfamiliar. The ship they had once stood on had vanished, leaving them stranded in an endless void. But one thing was certain. The ship's awakening was not just a one-time event. Whatever it had triggered, whatever force had been unleashed, was still out there. And they were now a part of it. The truth revealed. The void surrounding them felt oppressive, like an infinite ocean of nothingness. But the stars above them burned bright, distant, and cold. The U.S. horizon and its crew had been thrown into an entirely different realm, a place far beyond the known galaxies. No systems were working. The once familiar hum of the ship was silent, replaced by an eerie stillness that stretched on endlessly. Captain Tessa Clark scrambled to her feet, disoriented but determined. Her crew was scattered, picking themselves up and checking their suits. Riker, who had been closest to her when the pulse struck, was already on his feet, scanning the empty expanse with wide eyes. "What happened?" Riker muttered, his voice barely above a whisper as he looked around. Tessa's heart was pounding, her mind spinning. She looked around at the vast emptiness, then back at her crew. "I don't know," she admitted, the uncertainty of their situation weighing heavily on her. "But we're not where we were. The ship, it's gone." She turned her attention to the stars above, each one flickering with an alien light. This wasn't just a random area of space. This felt different, otherworldly. The ship, whatever it had been, had transported them to another plane, or perhaps another dimension altogether. The crew gathered around her, each of them equally shaken by the events. "Captain," Lieutenant Riker began, his tone hesitant. "The children, they were part of it, weren't they? They weren't just passengers. They were the key to whatever this ship was." Tessa nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, Riker. They were. And they were not alone in their power." Her mind flashed back to the moment when the little girl with red hair had smiled at her and warned them. The ship has chosen. She had no idea what that choice meant, but it was clear now that it wasn't just the children who were part of the ship's purpose. The entire crew, by their presence, had been swept into something much larger than a rescue mission. The girl's words echoed in her mind. The ship is not just a vessel. It is the harbinger of a reckoning. "What do we do now?" Riker asked, his voice full of both fear and determination. Tessa turned toward the vastness of space around them. "We survive. We adapt. And we find out exactly what we've triggered." Just as she spoke, a faint, shimmering light began to appear in the distance. It wasn't a star, nor a ship. It was something else entirely. A swirling vortex of energy, radiating in every direction, its colors shifting in a mesmerizing pattern. It felt alive. "That's it," Tessa said under her breath, her instincts kicking into overdrive. "That's where the ship took us." The vortex pulsed again, brighter this time, and Tessa's crew instinctively took a step back, as if the very air around them was charged with danger. But Tessa stood still, her eyes narrowing. "Captain?" Riker asked, his voice full of doubt. "What is that?" "It's like it's calling us." Tessa didn't answer at first. She was too deep in thought. She had heard of ancient civilizations in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, civilizations that wielded powers beyond comprehension, but they had long since vanished, leaving only relics and ruins behind. This vortex was no relic. It was alive. And somehow, the children were connected to it. As if reading her thoughts, Riker added, "Do you think?" The children opened this. "That's why the ship was destabilizing, because it was supposed to bring us here." Tessa nodded slowly, but there was a deep unease in her chest. Yes, the ship's true purpose wasn't just to find us. It brought us here, to this place. Whatever that vortex is, it holds the answers we need. And the children, I think they've been prepared for this moment their whole lives. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. The children had known this was coming. They hadn't just been part of the ship, they were integral to its mission. They were the bridge between humanity and this unknown force, and now they had unwittingly activated something far beyond their control. A sudden thought struck her like lightning. What if the ship wasn't just a vessel? What if it was a weapon? But before she could voice this, the shimmering vortex flickered and expanded. The air around them thickened, and the light became unbearable. It felt like the very space around them was bending, warping. They weren't just standing in the expanse anymore. They were being pulled toward it. "Get back!" Tessa shouted, her voice filled with urgency. But it was too late. The force of the vortex intensified, and before anyone could react, they were swept into it, an unstoppable current of energy. The stars around them vanished in an instant, replaced by the swirling mass of light. The crew members screamed, but the sound was lost in the overwhelming energy as they were torn from their reality. Tessa felt her body being stretched, twisted by the vortex. She fought to keep her consciousness, to stay aware of what was happening. But her senses blurred, and the universe seemed to collapse around her. Time and space lost all meaning as they were pulled deeper into the core of the energy. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, without warning, the pressure released, and the crew found themselves standing in a completely new environment. They were no longer in space, no longer in the void of the unknown. They were on a planet, a strange alien world unlike anything they had seen before. The sky above was a swirling mass of color, green, purple, and gold, and the air was thick with an otherworldly energy. The ground beneath their feet was soft and springy, like moss, and in the distance, towering structures rose from the ground, their shapes angular and unfamiliar. It was as if they had crossed into a parallel reality, a realm that had been waiting for them. Tessa's mind raced. "What is this place?" she whispered. "We're not in our galaxy anymore," Riker said, his voice full of awe. "I think we've crossed into a completely different dimension, Captain." Tessa's eyes scanned the horizon. This was no accident. They had been brought here for a reason. Whatever lay ahead, whatever this strange world held, would be the key to understanding the vortex, the ship, and the children's role in it all. She could feel it. This world, this place, was not merely a destination. It was the beginning of something far greater, something that would change the fate of humanity forever. And they were right at the center of it all. The guardians of the void. The air around them shimmered with a strange, palpable energy, vibrating through Tessa's very bones. She could feel it in the ground beneath her boots, the pulsing sensation that seemed to echo from the planet's core. It was as though the world itself was alive, watching, waiting. Her crew stood around her, eyes wide with disbelief. They had crossed into a new dimension, one that felt untouchable by time and space. The sky above them churned in hues of green, purple, and gold, swirling like a kaleidoscope of colors yet never colliding. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "What is this place?" Riker asked, his voice full of awe as he took a cautious step forward, the soft ground beneath his feet giving way like thick moss. "I don't know," Tessa said, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced back at the vortex that had brought them here. It was still visible in the distance, but it was no longer a swirling mass of energy. Instead, it seemed to have settled into a quiet, pulsing light, as if it had simply become another part of the landscape. But we're not in the galaxy anymore. This is somewhere else, somewhere far beyond what we can understand. As her eyes scanned the horizon, Tessa could see something in the distance, a faint shimmer in the air, almost like a mirage. It seemed to be moving, shifting, as though something, or someone, was watching them. She felt a knot form in her stomach, a deep instinct telling her that they were not alone on this world. "We need to keep moving," Tessa said, her voice filled with determination. "There has to be something here, something that can explain what happened, and what the children have to do with it." The crew followed her, their steps cautious as they traversed the soft ground. As they walked, the shimmering horizon seemed to shift and change with each step they took. The world felt alive with energy, as though it was adjusting itself to their presence, pulling them deeper into its mysteries. The further they went, the more Tessa could sense that something ancient and powerful was watching them. The planet wasn't just a place. It was a being, or perhaps a consciousness, aware of every movement and thought. The feeling was overwhelming, like being observed by 1,000 unseen eyes. Then, without warning, the ground before them split open with a deafening roar. A massive, towering figure emerged from the earth, its form made of swirling energy and stone, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. It was a being of pure power, unlike anything Tessa had ever encountered. It stood before them, motionless, as if it had been waiting for their arrival. "Guardians," Riker whispered in awe, his voice trembling. "It's a guardian. It's here to judge us." The guardian's massive form towered over them, its limbs made of shifting energy and glowing stone, its face a dark void framed by lines of light that pulsed like veins. It seemed to be a living, breathing entity, its very presence radiating an ancient, unfathomable power. Tessa felt a chill run down her spine as the guardian's gaze turned toward her. It was as if it could see into her very soul, searching for something. There was no malice in its eyes, but there was an undeniable authority, a sense of purpose that dwarfed everything in her understanding. The guardian's voice filled the air, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to echo in her mind rather than her ears. "Who dares disturb the resting place of the void?" The guardian's voice boomed, its words vibrating in Tessa's chest. "You who have crossed the threshold, who have awakened the ancient path, speak." Tessa stepped forward, her mind racing. She had no idea what this being was, or what it wanted. But one thing was certain, they had not come to this world by accident. "I am Captain Tessa Clark of the U.S. Horizon," she said, her voice steady despite the overwhelming presence of the Guardian. "We didn't mean to disturb anything. We came looking for answers." The Guardian's gaze seemed to soften for a moment, though its form remained just as imposing. It tilted its head, as though contemplating her words. "Answers," the Guardian repeated, its voice a low rumble. "You seek answers to a question that cannot be answered, for the truth is not meant for those who are not chosen." Tessa's heart skipped a beat. "Chosen? What do you mean?" The Guardian's eyes glowed brighter, its massive form shifting as it began to speak again. "You are not meant to understand all that you see. The children, the ship, they were the harbingers of your coming. But you are the travelers who will cross the void between worlds, carrying the weight of your species' survival. This place is not a resting place. It is the threshold. And you must choose whether you will pass into the true realms of existence, or whether you will fade from time, forgotten." Tessa felt a lump form in her throat. This wasn't just a test. It wasn't just about surviving this strange world. This was a trial, one that would determine the future of humanity itself. Whatever the Guardian was asking, Whatever choice it was offering had implications far beyond their current understanding. "What happens if we choose wrong?" Riker asked, his voice trembling. The Guardian's form flickered as if considering the question. "If you choose wrongly, the path will close. You will be cast back into the void, your existence erased from the fabric of the universe." Tessa's mind reeled. She had come to this place thinking they were just looking for answers. But now it was clear, this wasn't just about them. This was about humanity's future. They had been chosen, but so had the children. And the question was now before them. Would they be able to survive the trials of this place, or would they become nothing more than lost echoes in the fabric of existence? "We're ready," Tessa said, her voice filled with resolve. "Tell us what we must do." The Guardian's eyes blazed with light. "You will face the trial of the void. But first, you must learn. And you must choose. Will you walk the path of unity, or will you remain divided? Only then will you be worthy of the power to alter the fate of all worlds." And with that, the Guardian raised its hand, and the world around them began to shift. The landscape twisted, bending as if the planet itself was alive, reshaping in response to the ancient being's will. The trial had begun.